biggest game releases of June 2025.
New month is here, and with it, not just the usual slew of new video games, but a whole new video game console, which doesn't happen that often. So let's get down to it. Here is the launch lineup for the Nintendo Switch 2 and the rest of June 2025's biggest game releases. Before we get into it, the usual disclaimer that while we do our very best to be comprehensive and accurate, video game release dates have the tendency to suddenly change, and occasionally they just come out of nowhere. Given the amount of big game announcements that happen in the beginning of June, it is extremely possible, if not likely, that some new games get added to this month's lineup after this video goes up. And of course, we do occasionally make mistakes, so bear with us, and as always, for up-to-date information, check your local listings. Anyway, let's get into it. On June 4th, Deltarune, the sequel to Undertale,
chapters 1 through 4,
rearranged, gets released in full, and you can get both
Undertale looking like
chapters that have already come
the graphics. I mean, I guess not the graphics, the style
out, plus two brand new ones that make up the rest of the game on PS4, PS5, PC, and Nintendo Switch. A day later, you can grab Deltarune for Nintendo Switch 2, and you can also grab the console itself, plus all the various and sundry accessories and peripherals that are expected.
I wonder what I wish I could see the difference. I'm sure there's a difference thing, like specs. Be cool to see, to get, I guess. I don't know. Like, what? I mean, the games are just going to run better, right? I mean, honestly, that's it, really, when I think about it. It does look, it's thinner, at least from these images. It looks nice. Looks really good. Here's this one, at least. I never knew this thing came with a stand until recently. Oh my god. Cheat. This one has a built-in stand as well.
Day one, as well as a whole bunch of games, some of which are
honestly Mario Kart or Mario Party, I guess.
Are new.
Sound lit though.
Mario Kart World, as you're probably well aware, is Mario Kart in an open world, and that sounds awesome. Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour is sort of like Astro's Playroom was for PS5, a game about a bunch of little people running around inside your new video game console, except in this case, it's a lot more informative and sterile, and it'll cost you $10. Survival Kids is a modern spin on an old Game Boy Color game about kids stuck on a desert island, and Fast Fusion looks like someone fused F-Zero together with Wipeout and will have you fusing different flying race cars together to make different flying race cars. A whole bunch of games that are already out for other consoles are getting ported to Switch 2 day one with varying degrees of tweaks and new features, and these are those games in no particular order other than that of the alphabet. Arcade Archives 2 Ridge Racer lets you test drive your brand new video game console by playing a port of a 32-year-old arcade game. Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster is a bit more to write home about, a fully up-res overhaul of the 2012 3DS game. Considering the Switch 2 has, at best, something like 9 times the functional resolution of the 3DS, that is a pretty big graphical leap. Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition will likely be a bit of a visual downgrade compared to most of the current gen versions out there, but it's looking a lot smoother than The Witcher 3 did on the original Nintendo Switch. And either way, it's pretty cool to have games this size on the go. I'm assuming we're all familiar with Fortnite, and that'll definitely run better on the Switch 2 than it did on the original Switch. Hitman World of Assassination Signature Edition collects the entire Hitman trilogy, all of its DLC and extras, and it even adds a couple of Mario and Luigi themed outfits and gadgets as a pre-order bonus, which are very funny. I love Hitman, these games rule. It's pretty impressive that Hogwarts Legacy was able to run at all on the original Switch, but it'll definitely benefit from the increased horsepower or hippogriff power or whatever of the new model. Capcom's action strategy hybrid Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess sort of came with minimal fanfare when it released last year, but it was received well enough, so hopefully it gets more love on Switch 2. Nobunaga's Ambition Awakening Complete Edition hits Switch 2 and PS5 day one, which features the base game in the long-running strategy series, plus all the DLC and extras, and now support. Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S is Puyo Puyo Tetris, except now it's on Nintendo Switch 2. Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma is hitting Switch 1, PS5, and PC on May 30th, and it'll be on Switch 2 day one. Sid Meier's Civilization 7 seems like it'll take advantage of the new Joy-Con mouse functionality pretty well, but if you want something a little faster paced, you may be better off with Sonic Shadow Generations. That's a game about animals that run fast. The exclusively co-op Split Fiction is one of the best reviewed games of the year, but if you'd rather be competitive, Street Fighter Gears 1 and...
The Switch 2 got powered in, what the fuck? Holy fuck. I mean, Zelda runs on the Switch. Zelda's a big ass game, but still.
2 Fighters Edition is another option. One upside to both of these games on Switch is that the Switch and the Switch 2 are the only consoles that include 2 controllers out of the box, which is nice if you want to do some couch multiplayer. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are both getting enhanced Switch 2 versions, and if you bought the originals, you can do the whole upgrade thingy, but the save transfer thing is probably a whole can of worms. I'm sure we'll have another video about that somewhere when those games come out. Finally, Yakuza 0 Director's Cut makes its way to Switch 2. If you've never played any of these games, Zero is a prequel origin story, and it's a decent enough place to start, though I personally recommend starting with Yakuza Kiwami, which is a remake of the first game in the series that hit Switch 1 last year and is probably on sale right now. Zero was the first game I played in the series, and I made sense of it, but there was a whole lot of plot twists and stuff that didn't really click until I played Kiwami after the fact. Some people will argue with this suggestion in favor of playing the series in chronological order, but the whole point of a prequel is to add backstory to established characters. The whole point of the Star Wars prequels is to show how Anakin became Darth Vader, and if you watch The Phantom Menace first without knowing who Darth Vader is, it's a little bit weird. And George Lucas didn't make that movie first, so maybe there's a reason for that. Anyway, Yakuza 0 and Yakuza Kiwami are both great games, and you should play them, so I have more people to talk about Yakuza with.
What I gotta fix? If I'm not broken, what I gotta fix?
And speaking of Star Wars, if you'd like to pay a visit to the original sci-fi saga about galactic empires and space wizards on desert planets whose homework Lucas definitely copied, there's also Dune Awakening. That is a survival MMO from the Conan Exiles team, and it hits PC on the 10th. That same survival MMO from the Conan Exiles team, and it hits PC on the 10th. That same day is also the release of Mind's Eye, the impressively ambitious-looking new project from ex-Rockstar GTA veteran Leslie Benzies. I was really skeptical this game would actually come out this summer, but here it is. Anybody hoping for a massive, living, breathing open world and a 60-hour campaign out the gate may want to adjust their expectations. The devs have described this game as a roughly 15-hour linear narrative experience that is set in a faux open world, so probably more in line with L.A. Noire or the earlier Mafia games. Where Mind's Eye gets really interesting is that the PC version also has a whole suite of game design features that allow players to create and share their own missions and levels without a lick of coding experience, and those missions and levels are playable on all platforms, so there's a lot of potential there, and I'm curious to see how it all comes together. That's on PC, Xbox Series, and PS5. Speaking of user-generated content, a day later, Stellar Blade comes to PC, and I'm sure that nobody is going to do anything inappropriate with mods or repurposed character models from this video game. Nope, not a chance. Despite Friday the 13th being a Jason day, this year it is being hijacked by a Freddy in Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic. This will have you contending with a prototype endoskeleton that can take any form, which sounds almost as scary as the fact that this is the 11th mainline installment in the FNAF series that is on PS5 and PC. Speaking of making a whole lot of slightly different versions of the same basic thing, that day also sees the release of The Alters, a deep space survival game that'll have you making copies of yourself to help lighten the load. So sort of like that Fantasia bit with all the mobs that causes you anxiety, or the 1996 Michael Keaton box office bomb Multiplicity. Remember Multiplicity? Anyone?
2, 3, 4, 12.
Anyway, that's on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. The Alters, I mean. Multiplicity is probably streaming somewhere, but I was talking about the game. If you're old enough to get a reference to Multiplicity, you're probably old enough to remember Gex, easily the most infamous sex symbol of 90s cartoon mascot platformers. Sorry, Bubsy, please put some pants on. In any case, Limited Run Games has lovingly restored Crystal Dynamics' original Gex trilogy and added some new features and quality of life improvements, though perhaps the biggest quality of life improvement of all is being able to play deep cover Gecko without constantly being terrified your mom will walk in during one of the FMV sequences featuring Baywatch's Marlise Andrada.
Hey Tiger, guess where I am? Trapped in the media dimension.
That's coming to Switch, PC, Xbox Series, and PS5.
Media dimension.
On June 17th, Tron Catalyst comes to those same platforms. That's a narrative action-adventure game courtesy of Mike Bithell, who also gave us Thomas Was Alone and John Wick Hex, though sadly, I don't think the soundtrack is by Daft Punk or Nine Inch Nails. That very same day, the action roguelike, the soundtrack courtesy of Mike. June 17th, Tron Catalyst comes to those PC, Xbox Series, and PS5. On June 17th, Tron Catalyst comes
kind of cool. Reminds me of like over the top watch.
To those same platforms, that's a narrative action adventure game courtesy of Mike Bithell, who also gave us Thomas Was Alone and John Wick Hex, though sadly I don't think the soundtrack is by Daft Punk or Nine Inch Nails. That very same day, the action roguelite Soulstone Survivors comes to PS5 and Xbox Series. That also leaves early access on Steam, where people have been playing it since late 2022 and apparently really enjoying it based on the overwhelming positivity of almost 21,000 user reviews. If you like deck building and tactical combating on the railroad all the livelong day, you can enjoy both of those things in one place when Battle Train pulls into the station on PC and Switch a day later. On June 19th, Raidu Remastered: The Mystery of the Soulless Army gives a fresh coat of paint and some new VO and bells and whistles to the 2006 entry in the Shin Megami Tensei spin-off series Devil Summoner. This one takes place in 1930s Japan, but Grigori Rasputin is there for some reason despite dying repeatedly in 1916, though I guess maybe historical accuracy isn't the point of a game with demons and a talking cat. That's on everything, including Switch 2. If you played the hit 2022 beat-em-up roguelike Sifu and thought to yourself, man, this is great, but I wish I was kicking a soccer ball instead of a bunch of dudes' asses, well, great news, because Rematch is basically Sifu to ball, developed by the same team and taking a similar grounded approach. So rather than controlling an entire team of players whose performance is determined by stats and possibly microtransactions, Rematch features 5v5 matches where each player controls one player in the game, and how good that player is in the game at kicking the ball into the goal entirely relies on how good the player controlling them is at making them kick the ball into the goal. It seems fairly straightforward, but describing it certainly doesn't seem that way. Anyway, Rematch is on Xbox Series, PS5, and PC.
This is Pod 5.
Pod 5.
The first fully immersive sleep system. Intelligent,
Evolve your
adaptive,
sleep. Low key though, I
effortless.
need to.
Still on the 19th, Chronicles of the Wolf is a Metroidvania that is heavy on the Vania. That'll have you hunting down the Beast of Gévaudan, a creature that infamously terrorized the French countryside in the 1700s and then inspired the film Brotherhood of the Wolf 300 and something years later. That's on both PlayStations, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. If you'd rather ride a hoverboard and play a guitar in outer space, there's Star Overdrive, a sick-looking open-world action-adventure game that's been out on Switch since April and is now coming to PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. I think the last game I rode a hoverboard in was Death Stranding, and it wasn't actually a hoverboard, but like a little floating carrier thing you could kind of ride on.
Let's get down that hill as fast as we can, trying to shred, curve, twist, hop, ollie.
Hopefully that thing returns for Death Stranding 2 on the beach, which is out this month. From the sound of it, this is going to be a continuation of the first game, but with better combat and an even longer list of mocapped celebrities. Like a lot of people, I went into the first Death Stranding not fully understanding what kind of a game it would be. I think at one point I speculated that it would be like a post-apocalyptic spin on Paperboy, where you have to deliver the mail while avoiding all sorts of stuff in the road like giant cats and the Grim Reaper. Or maybe a more realistic version of Yoshi's Island, where if you get hit like giant apocalyptic spin on Paperboy, where you have to deliver the mail while avoiding all sorts of stuff in the road like giant cats and the Grim Reaper. Or maybe a more realistic version of Yoshi's Island, where if you get hit, the baby starts crying and you have to calm it down before a witch steals it. And you know what? I was mostly right. I don't think there was a witch in Death Stranding, but you do weaponize your own bodily waste, not unlike Yoshi. I know those things look like eggs, but if they're eggs, why do they come out after he eats enemies? Think about it. Anyway, Death Stranding 2 is going to be almost as weird as that last tangent, and it sounds like it'll have a healthy amount of Metal Gear Solid DNA as well, so I'm all in. That's on PS5, June 26th. Also on the 26th is the 25th anniversary remaster of System Shock 2, which is the precursor to BioShock. So if you're sick of waiting around for that series to get a new installment, or to play Ken Levine's next game, Judas, where you also shoot weird stuff out of your hands, that's an option, and it's coming to everything. And finally, there's Tamagotchi Plaza, which is coming to both Nintendo Switches, and it sort of looks like if Animal Crossing was about Tamagotchi and also took place in a mini-mall. I applaud whoever localized the title, because in Japan, this is called Tamagotchi no Puchi Puchi Omisechi Omachi Dosama, which loosely translates to Tamagotchi Little Shopchi, thank you for waiting, which is a hilarious thing to tack on to an already pretty long title. Before we go, here's some trivia for you. Tamagotchi is a portmanteau of tamago, which means egg, and uwachi, which means watch, which makes sense because those things are basically egg watches, but that's still a very funny pairing of words. Like the time I bought a Jar Jar Binks mask at a thrift store, and the old lady who rung me up wrote rubber horse on the receipt. That was an odd one. And I think we can stop there. Those are June 2025's biggest games. Once again, it is very likely some more games get added to this list after me saying this to you into that camera, and it goes to the screen of whatever it is you're watching this video on. But if you'd like to keep track of upcoming game releases, go check out the IGN playlist app. It's like Letterboxd or Goodreads, but to help you keep track of the video games you are playing, or want to play, or never want to play, but want to put on some arbitrary list. As always, huge thank you to Amanda Medina, Chris Del Padre, and Logan Plant for making this video possible, and an even huger thank you to everybody who took the time to watch. I'll see you next month. Hopefully, everybody who wants a Nintendo Switch 2 gets their hands on a Nintendo Switch 2. See you later.
Later.